Okay.
So hello. Thank you all for coming to our 2025 Online Arts and Culture Series, Unlock Your Creative Potential, Insights on Sync Licensing, Recording, and Festival Trends. My name is Kimberly Mittelstadt. As I said, apologies, clearly having some weird tech issues on my end, but I will still be moderating from my black box. So I'm the Creative Arts Specialist with the Wyoming Arts Council. My position entails working with individual artists throughout the state, and I oversee our WYMI program. So WYMI is our Wyoming Independent Music Initiative. This program works to nurture Wyoming musicians and their talent. We offer a variety of programs aimed at strengthening the independent music scene in Wyoming, encouraging and supporting venues to host live music, and aim to drive community development, social cohesion, and livability for the artist. This webinar is brought in partnership with the Wyoming Arts Council. So big thank you to Ryan Deneen O'Neill for assisting with our tech today, as limited and complicated as it's been. So huge thank you to Wya. And so with that, I'm actually going to pass this off to Sean Day, who is a board member with Wya, to give a quick Wya update.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, can everybody hear me okay, first of all? Getting some nods, great. Well, yeah, I want to thank everybody for showing up today. I'm really excited to learn today. So I think the topic on music festivals and licensing and syncs is going to be very interesting. As far as WYA is concerned, we are the Wyoming Arts Alliance. It's comprised of 8 board members, and right now we've got Ryan, that is the interim director, leading the ship, who's on our call today. Carmen Rossi is our president. For those of you who don't know about the Wyoming Arts Alliance, it's a nonpartisan, statewide, nonprofit 501c3 organization dedicated to improving the climate for arts and culture throughout our beautiful state. The vision is more art, better Wyoming, pretty simple. And our mission is to advance a creative and culturally vibrant state, which I think today's webinar is going to do. We are currently in transition right now, but I'm really excited. It feels like we're on a new path with Wya. So yeah, with that said, I want to welcome all of the artists, the educators out there, teachers, and yeah, I think everyone's excited to learn today. So with that, I'll hand it off to one of the panelists.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Sean. We'll go ahead and we'll start introducing our panelists today. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to Louisa to begin, to give us a short little intro about yourself and the work that you do.
Sure. My name is Louisa Bizio, music supervisor, mostly specialized in advertising, but I've worked on documentary films as well. And a sync agency as well.
Thank you so much, Louisa. Next, we'll pass it off to Will Flagg.
Hi there, I'm Will Flagg. I'm currently an assistant lecturer at UW in the music department, where I get to talk about music production with students. I also do various live sound gigs around the area, as well as produce records sometimes when I have the time. I also like playing various instruments too, like a lot of us. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Will. And next we have Aaron Davis.
Hello, coming at you from Hoback, Wyoming, from my studio, 3-Yarded Recording. Been a full-time musician for 20 years and started a studio about 7 years ago and produced some tours. I'm also a music journalist and photographer, so I preview and review some shows in the area. And then also produce a couple of concert series, mostly here locally in Teton County. And then I'm an audio engineer and mixing engineer and a mastering engineer. So I tend to work with regional artists here out of the studio.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And last, but certainly not least, we have Mandy Connolly.
Hi, I'm Mandy Connolly. I'm currently based in Cody. My background, I have a degree in graphic design and found my passion in chasing live music. And through the process over about 20 years, I've gone through everything of backstage photography to festival branding, producing, putting on concerts, marketing, into booking, had a roster of artists, about a dozen of them, at one point. I've worked in screen printing and merch, so I have a vast experience kind of across the music business world. And as a full-time position currently, full disclosure, I work for the Wyoming Arts Council doing marketing and events.
Thank you, Mandy. So thank you all so much for sharing your knowledge and participating in this discussion today. I'm going to start this out kind of going through sync first. So my first question is for Louisa. So when looking at a band that let's say, is comfortable with their booking and is fairly well established with their performance routes, but is yet to really dabble in sync licensing, what are the first steps for a band looking to begin their sync journey?
Great question. So the first thing that you'll want to do is make sure all of your songs are registered with your performance royalty organization, whether that's BMI or ASCAP. They're both about the same. They pay about the same. I usually recommend to people who don't want to start a publishing company to go with BMI because you don't have to register separately as a publisher. You're automatically assigned as the publisher if you assign yourself as the writer. And then what you'll also want to do is for each of the songs that you want to pitch for sync, make sure that you have your PRO IPI information. That's just your BMI or ASCAP ID number, and then your song information. You'll want to know the splits between you and your bandmates. So if it's 3 of you, 33, 33, 33, or 4 of you, 25, 25, 25. So you'll want to make sure you have all that noted down. We use something called a split sheet to help note all that information. So the split sheet has the song title, the splits, what our writer's IPI information is, what our publisher's IPI information is, and then we'll also mention what our master splits are. So I think there's another, I think we'll go more into the split sheet later, but generally that's what you want to have. Another thing that's really helpful is to start thinking about what shows your music might sound good on. So you might say, I write these kind of songs, and I hear these kind of songs on this type of show or this type of film. And so just keeping that in the back of your mind. And then there's also a note you can put for each song, which is called sounds like. So if you say this song sounds like Alanis Morissette, you ought to know. That's good information to have. And then you can kind of back research music supervisors who might be looking at that there's a website called, and I should have written this down before. It's called Tune Find. And so what you can do is just look for what song your song sounds like, do a search for that. Let's say Alanis Morissette, you ought to know. And then it'll pull up shows and films that have that song. And then you can use that to kind of research who tends to place that kind of music.
Great, thank you, Louisa. Also, I missed this at the beginning, but if anyone in the participating in the webinar has any questions, please feel free to utilize chat. I've got that up, so I'll be popping those questions over to our panelists as we go through, and we'll also have time at the end for questions. So definitely utilize that if you have any questions as we're going through this webinar. Okay, but anyway, back to you, Louisa. Thank you. And so then kind of diving into a little bit more technical aspects of this, what are kind of the steps needed to start collecting royalties? And what's that difference that you would say between recording royalties and performance royalties?
Right, so this side of it, we don't really do a lot of, but I've done a lot in publishing. So you'll want to set up everything in your with your performance royalty organization, your PRO. And then you'll also want to set something up in Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange will collect your radio royalties. Again, a lot of that we don't deal with. We might pay you usually an upfront fee, which is whatever we want to license your song for upfront. Sometimes you can collect back in royalties. That's where you'll collect everything through your performance royalty organization. But yeah, so Sound Exchange, all of that is separate, and that's if you get radio play. And then you'll want to also see if you have everything set up correctly with the MLC, the Mechanical Licensing Collective. A lot of what you'll find is that song tracking gets lost and it isn't registered correctly across everyone else's catalog. And so there was even an article that came out from Eminem's publisher, which said that even though he's major, that they weren't tracking his royalties correctly. So what you'll do is you'll go into the MLC make sure you're registered. You can look for your song catalog and just make sure all of the data looks correct. And then if it doesn't, just go in and update that. Oh, and I wanted to make a comment to the previous statement because you had mentioned if your band has been gigging and is comfortable gigging. I do want to point out that you don't have to be an established band in order to get sync licensing. There are some music supervisors that might say, hey, we want an established band that has a good following, and that's what we want to license. But a lot of times we're just looking for a song that fits the scene. So we might just say, we just want a song that sounds like 90s grunge. And so if you know any bands that have that, just send your music our way. We're looking for these particular lyrics. Oh, and actually that's another thing. You might want to track your lyrics and other information. The more information you can give a music supervisor or sync agent to license your song, the more helpful. So sometimes they might say, hey, we have a scene with somebody based in Wyoming, so we really want a Wyoming-based artist. So just anything you can give, any background on yourself is helpful to have.
That's great advice. And then another kind of follow-up to what you had said earlier. So can you give a quick overview of split sheets and split sync and what artists can preemptively do to make the process easier for themselves down the road?
Yes. So again, just decide per each song what the splits of those will actually be, the writer splits, and how you want to divide that up between you and your band members or your co-writers. And then you'll also want your publishing splits. Usually those are the same between you guys, but sometimes people say, hey, I'm doing all of the pitching, so I'd like to take more of the publishing. I'd say keep it easy, just do everything even across everything. So you'll have your writer splits, your publisher splits, and then your master splits. You'll want that information. And then I have something that I've created called a song sample form. And I don't know if you guys are comfortable handing out my contact, but if you are, I can share this template with everyone. But what I have in here, it has your writer's information, which has your name, your email, and an address. So they'll want that information because they want to match your name to your paycheck, your address, so they can send you your paycheck, or so they can give you your W-9 or whatever they need to pay you. And then an email or phone number so that they can contact you. They'll want to know which PRO you're with, whether that's BMI, ASCAP, or CSAC, and then they'll want to know the IPI number. They'll want to know your splits. So those are the main things that you'll have. But I've also included other notes that all of us can reference because I'm also in a band as a hobby. And so we'll put date the song was released, date we recorded the song, and then I'll start keeping track of our ISWC or ISRC, all these kind of like just tracking information that I can. I'll put lyrics in there. I'll talk with the band so that we can agree on what song do you guys think this sounds like? What band do you think this sounds like? So that we can agree on that. And then that also helps us with playlist pitching too. So that's all miscellaneous and extra information, but really you'll need your name, email, phone, some kind of contact, and then your PRO, your IPI, and then your splittage percentage. And that's for writer splits, your publisher splits, and your master splits.
Awesome. And I have emails of everyone who participates in the webinar, so I will gladly follow up with any information they'd like to share with them as well. Okay, and then finally, kind of looking big picture, how can artists stand out when the industry is already very oversaturated?
I think the biggest thing that you can do, because we are flooded with a bunch of artists and bands pitching us, labels pitching us for different things. So if you can do your research ahead of time as best as you can to see what projects a music supervisor or a sync agent is looking for, that's really going to help, because a lot of times we might just default to going to our normal contacts to say, hey, we're looking for this, can you send us tracks? And if we're looking for something new, it's just easier for us to skim through all of our old emails by, let's say somebody says, you're looking for hip hop in the subject line. I know I can open that right away. And it's just kind of a nice way for us to categorize things as we're skimming through. So yeah, just if you, as best as you can, any research you can do on what projects supervisors or sync agents are looking for is really, really helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Louisa. I'm going to transition over and ask Will. So I know you're with UW. Oh, wait, we've got one question in the chat that I'll go ahead and read. So this one is, what is the best way to gain respectful access to sync agents and music supervisors? There are a lot of platforms, but is there a best practice? Is disco and the like necessary?
Love it. Okay. So I would say a lot of music supervisors prefer to go through a sync agent. And the reason why is just because sync agents will vet all of their information from the song, the artist, to make sure that there's not any samples in there. They do all of that cleanup ahead of time, and sometimes we're moving so fast placing the songs, we don't have time to pre-clear anything. So there's other things too, like for example, there's a couple of artists that we tried to reach out to without going through a sync agent, and they claim that they own the publishing rights, only for us to find out they don't actually own the publishing rights. And so that's just it. There's just a lot of issues that get cleared up through the sync agents first. So I would say it's nicer if you can target sync agents first. As far as gaining respect, I would say it's kind of the same thing. Look for their catalog. What kind of music are they currently signing? Some of them might say they only stick to those kind of genres or these kind of songs. Some of them say, hey, we have too much of this already, so we're actually looking for something different. Some of that you can glean on their website and looking through their catalog, and then just send them an email and say, hey, let's say you're in a situation where it's like, I noticed you have a lot of pop and rock, where actually, let's say we're country, but we noticed that there's been a lot of placement with country based on this show. Would you be interested in our stuff? And then just see where it goes from there. And then as far, and I think there's a handful of meetups that you can go to. You can get involved with the Guild of Music Supervisors and see if you can network that way. But I think there's other ways too, as far as gaining respect. I think what's nice is when someone emails us and says, hey, let's say you can't find information on what project we're looking for, and you say, I'm a new artist. Try to relate in some way. Maybe you say, I'm from Wyoming. I noticed you're also from Wyoming. We have a couple songs. I don't know, find some way to connect. You might say, I really loved this scene that you worked on this video. I thought it was genius that you used this song. I have a song just like it. So if you could find anything you can to kind of connect, that's really going to help, and that'll help your email stand out. And then just sound really personable and really authentic and honest. So almost everybody says, I have the perfect song for you. So don't say that, because everyone says that, and it just kind of makes you automatically move on. And then there's also, I can't think of what it's called, but if you search YouTube for a music supervisor, I would say start with Tune Find a song that sounds like yours, and do some reverse research on what music supervisors have placed that song. And then what you could do is maybe, oh man, I lost my train of thought. I think that's a good place to start. And then from there, you can look at maybe if you can identify the scene that used that particular song. That's where you can get your in on saying, hey, I loved how you used this song in this scene. I have a song that sounds just like it. Here's a link to that song and some other songs that I have in case you ever need music like that again. I think one way to lose the respect is to keep nudging them. We had a guy who nudged us several times, and then at one point started sending us threats if we didn't place this song. So we definitely never reached out to that person. We never know if your song is actually going to get placed. So even if we have a conversation with you saying that, hey, the editor really likes your song, it's not guaranteed until the film or the scene or the show is released. We just never know. Sometimes things will change last minute and they say, hey, they actually want to use a different song. So don't get upset at us. We're very much a middleman between you and the editors or the directors, but we're doing all that we can. And I also want to let you know that there are songs that are in my list of my dream songs to place, and I just can't always find, opportunities for them. So just be patient with us. We'll see what we can place for you. And then as far as platforms, that's a good question. Disco is what a lot of music supervisors use to trade songs between us and artists and sync agents, all of that. But I would say it's not necessary for you as a band or you as an artist to have it unless you really want to specialize in sync, or unless you have a ton of songs to pitch. I mean, it is only, $10 a month, but I don't think it's really that necessary unless this is going to be your bread and butter. You would be just fine to send us a link to your Spotify and then a download link if we decide to use it. You will want to make sure that you have an instrumental version, because the editors will need that in case there's a scene they need to do any other changes instrumentally or in the background. So yeah, an instrumental version, and then you'll send us your full version, and then we can let you know if we need any other edits to that.
Thank you so much, Larissa. That was very helpful. Okay. Again, feel free to use the chat, but I'm going to move on and switch back over to Will. So as I was saying, Will, we know you're with UW. The university offers a new music industry major degree. Can you tell us a little bit about this program and maybe your involvement in it, and or like benefits to it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kim. So a lot of us down here in the music department are pretty excited about this new degree track because for two reasons. One, it provides an option that isn't that traditional music degree path, right? So up until this option, there was no track for someone who wasn't doing band, choir, orchestra, or maybe concert piano at UW, right? So now we kind of have this catch-all that we're calling music industry studies. And these students right now, they're taking individual instruction with me, and it's non-auditioned, which is another benefit. It's open to everyone. And with me, we're working on music production skills. Then they take a few of my courses. So they take some on. I have a digital music course and a recording techniques course. Then they take a few courses with Nicole Reiner, who does the entrepreneurship certificate and arts entrepreneurship certificate. I'm sure she's probably worked with some of y'all before. And then they're going to be taking a few classes on like pop music, instrument playing techniques, and songwriting. So that's it's kind of a modern option that is now available at UW, right? And so I'm working with students right now. Like this is the first year. It's kind of a soft start. We don't officially start until next year. Excuse me. But I've been having the individual instruction and trying to figure out how those are going to look. And I've been having a lot of fun because, some students come in with interests, they're like, hey, I want to work on recording myself. And so we work on that. I get them set up with the DAW that works for them. I loan them some equipment if they need it. And then we start, going back and forth weekly. But then also sometimes people come in and like, some of these students are trying to be like singer-songwriter types, and they come in and they bring their guitar in and it's in really bad playable shape, right? It's not in great shape. So we've talked about, with a few of my students, I've talked about like guitar setups, right? And like talked about how you make a guitar play well. And so a lot of what I'm bringing to the table is like practical experience, because I kind of took the back door to being faculty in the music department. I have live sound experience, and I've worked at a music store where I did some repair, and I have recording experience too. And then I knew just enough of the the classical world to be able to find a position there. But so I'm bringing these practical skills, and that's a lot of fun. Oh, I said we were excited for two reasons. One, access to new students, right? And this whole category of students who maybe didn't do band or choir for 7 years already, but want to do music. And then the other reason is it can be added as a second major. So maybe some of those students who want to study, cello performance or vocal performance, they can also take these classes and learn a few more. Like I said, a lot of it's practical skills, right? A lot of practice, because I'm sure a lot of you know that that's why we're here today, right? Is because to make a living as a musician, you have to have your hands in a few different things. And so that's what I get to talk to students about, and that's a lot of fun for me. And like I said, there seems to be some excitement. We'll see how things go next year as that picks up. But I think does anyone have any questions about the degree, or anything about any of the topics we would cover?
Yeah, feel free to throw those in the chat. Thanks, Will. Yeah, it seems like a really cool program. And good job, UW, for expanding and not depleting resources. Okay, so I'm going to expand this next question. I'm going to throw Aaron in on this. So what recording resources are you two aware of in the state that are readily available to Wyoming artists? And I'll kind of loop in this next question too. Like, what, in your opinion, can artists get away with as a do-it-yourself option? And then what is better left to paid professionals?
Well, I know about, there's a couple studios here in Teton County, myself and Ben Winship, he's over in Teton Valley on the Idaho side. in terms of professional studios. And then the library here actually has the Wonder Institute recording studio, which is they set up, I believe, a couple years ago. So you can actually book time at the library and go in and use their recording resources, which has been awesome. Our local community radio station, KHOL, also has a recording setup that can be utilized for free. And so those are a couple of free options that people can use. And then, I know a handful of other engineers around the state that have project studios like mine. My studio is based out of my house, so it's not a full production studio like some are, and there's a lot of setups like that around. And then in terms of what an artist can get away with on their own, everything, to be honest. It's just, sky's the limit these days. The tools available to all of us are getting better all the time. And there's so many now that it really kind of takes a little bit of experience getting to know, a platform to record on, or just the basic knowledge. But in terms of making demos and using creative outlets like software to build out arrangements and songs and share those with bandmates or whoever, I encourage people to use voice memos. If you have an iPhone, is my favorite thing because it's immediate. And in terms of just having a small studio setup, you can get really simple with it. And one of my favorite things is to tell people is to be able to hit the record button in less than a minute. So you can be able to grab those sparks and ideas. And in terms of releasing music, doing DIY recording and releasing your own music, it's totally doable. I would say there's a lot of hoops to jump through on the engineering side, in terms of learning. And that's how I got into recording on my own, was recording my very first solo record a long time ago. So I bought a basic studio setup. It's when digital recording first started getting popular and accessible. And it took a really long time to make that record and put it out, but I learned so much. And that's been that kind of continual process of learning. And these days, I've released 12 records, and 3 of those have been self-recorded and self-mixed, and all the other ones I've chose to go into other studios because I really appreciate separating engineering with creation and recording. So that's just me personally. I can do it either way, but I really prefer to go into a professional studio once I have a batch of songs that are arranged, because I really appreciate working with other people that do their job well, and also using, I've always been in the situation where I've never hired a producer. I've hired an engineer that I talk into being co-producer with me. And so that's the role I've sort of taken at my own studio, is trying to usher an artist in through the creative process, not just as somebody who places a mic somewhere and records the music, but trying to tap into the best side of each artist. And that also goes all the way down to releasing, like, ideas for how to release music. I'm working with an artist right now that's about to release her first record, and just has no idea how to do it. And she, we co-produced this record, and in the beginning she had asked me to, but I sometimes it's hard to wear 2 hats. So it was interesting to see her become essentially the producer within the first half day, without even knowing it. And sometimes just jumping in with another brain or two more brains that are musically inclined and can bring a good vibe to a session, can make really a whole huge difference. And I do that with the session players that come in here. You know, I really love working with people that just bring a good attitude. You know, in terms of being talented, you certainly want talented people involved, but people that are easy to work with and bring a good vibe to your environment can go a long way. And bouncing ideas and trying things and failing, you know, being willing to fail is a big thing in the music industry, as we all know. And so it's, I think if you're wanting to accomplish a commercial product that is, you know, if you're shooting for instance, in Americana, if you're shooting for the level of a product like Sierra Farrell, for instance, who just won 4 or 5 Grammys, you know, she started out busking and hopping trains, and now she's in professional studios in Nashville, and she's had this staircased career. And I think if you're aiming for that level, that quality, then you're looking at outsourcing to as many professionals as you can in terms of outsourcing recording, especially recording and also promotion, and you know, it goes on and on, social media content. But it really comes down to your budget and what you want out of the final product. And these days it's hard to put a tangible aspect on you know, the quality of the sound versus how it's connect with an audience, because they don't seem quite that tangible anymore, depending on what genre it is and what you're putting out there. And another example that I'll throw out there, I'm sure many of you are familiar with an artist, Jesse Wells, that kind of blew up this year. He got big by recording his songs under power lines behind his house with an iPhone on a tripod, and now he's selling out theaters across the country. And so he started out primitive, and now he's being produced by Dave Cobb. And so there's a way to start out very primitive with the tools that we all have before moving on to the professional steps that can kind of get you to that next level.
That was great, Aaron. Thank you. A lot of good nuggets of wisdom in there. I'll add a few other studios around the state. In Casper, there's Nick Canteen running Harmonix Studio, is what it's called, I think. He does great work.
Yeah.
I think I haven't talked to Sean Francis for a little bit, but last I knew he was doing some recording out of Fremont Music and Lander. Sean Day in Sheridan, of course. I hope the studio is going well for you, Sean. Down here in Laramie, we have Thunderground Sound, which has been run by Dan Tinker for a long time. And we're working on trying to bring some more work into that. I've helped him update it the last few years. It's downtown in the basement of the music store, so it's kind of a fun location. Oh, and I'll also add that you know, we have some community colleges with some great recording programs. If that's what you're interested in. Powell College has a great program. Sheridan College has a great program. Casper has, I don't know if they have a full program, but they have Larry's there, and they have a nice studio, and he teaches some folks some stuff too. They have a few classes, at least, if it's not a full program. So yeah, lots of good ways to learn how to do that, and but also good professionals. And to go off of what Aaron was saying, I wrote it down because you talked about how it's a continual process of learning, right? Like and that really is when you're learning the craft of working with audio, of recording, of mixing, whatever's, you know, part you're honing. it's all about learning a lot of stuff, and it can take a lot of time. And like you said, nothing's off limits as far as what someone might be able to do, but that doesn't mean everyone wants to do it, right? Like, Aaron, I bet have you got any business from people who tried to record themselves first, then decided they'd rather go work with someone who knows what they're doing, right? So
Yeah, and a lot of times it's happened where they want to hand off something that they've worked on themselves and see if you can fix it, which it's the tougher side of doing things versus starting over and trying to figure out how to build things from the ground up.
yeah, but that there is like there's any combination of way of getting it done. So that is, I mean, because that's another way. Yeah, maybe someone records themselves, then goes to someone like Aaron to help with mixing and mastering and finishing it up. Or
Also, to add to that, I'll say that, a lot of times people don't know how to best capture, because there's so many different ways to record, right? We can record live, we can build things from a scratch track of, for instance, a guitar and a vocal, and then build all the tracks on top of that. So I've had people that have come in to record a first or second album and then gone on to self-record, because they kind of see a bunch of light bulbs go off, and start gaining that knowledge, and perhaps, getting a little more techie along the way, and figuring out how to build out their own projects the way that they didn't know previously.
yeah,
Cool.
that's a good point.
Thank you both so much. Yeah. If there's, feel free to add anything else if you.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Cool. So Aaron, you have spearheaded independent music projects such as the WYOmericana Caravan Tour and the WyoFolk project. What is your advice for artists who have an idea for a project but don't know where to start?
Great question. I think that in terms of the scale of a project, I'll say that WYOmericana Caravan, as well as the WyoFolk project, they were both pretty large scale, complex projects with multiple bands involved. The caravan, WYOmericana Caravan, started, it went for 8 years, and the first 6 years was completely grassroots, without any support from the Arts Council. In the last 2 years, there was a collaboration. And so it really that tour started out from all of these individual bands building up a little bit of touring and a little bit of fan base on their own. And then my wife Cedar and I, who co-fronted Screen Door Porch at the time, we had been doing some shows with Jalon Crossland and some other folks. And our idea was just, since the markets are so few and far between in Wyoming, and it's a little harder to get recognized as a band in Wyoming versus a band in Denver, that we decided that pulling our resources together would be worth a shot. And so the tour started out really grassroots, and the way that we felt like we could pull this off with multiple bands and asking them to take all of this risk with us was to find our own sponsorship. So we went out and hit the ground really hard, and found 10 sponsors for that first tour. Half of those were cash sponsors, that were brands, most of which were Wyoming brands, but there were some national brands that donated cash and clothes and all kinds of cool stuff. But it took a lot of hours of trying to explain what this tour was when there wasn't one yet. And so we had to use our community resources, basically people that we had known and worked with before, that we kind of built out over the course of several years of making records and touring coast to coast. Sometimes the two of us in a van, and sometimes with a full band. And so my advice you know, in terms of getting a project off the ground, is to look around and see what community contacts you have already that might be great to collaborate with. Um, we collaborated with that first year with Surf Wyoming and Mountain Khakis, which were a couple Wyoming brands that we had met and had a connection with. And that really helped us out because then we could at least, you know, as we were booking out the tour, we could try to budget, you know, a minimum amount that each musician on the tour would hopefully get. And this was 12 musicians across 3 bands for that first tour. And through one of these sponsorships, um, there was a writer for the New York Times that caught word of it, and all of a sudden we had a full page feature in the New York Times, and they showed up to our 4th show of the tour, and um, that pretty much propelled the following 7 years because we had that big boom in the beginning to help us out. Um, and so the other thing is like just like-minded people in your creative circle that are good at different things. So we had, you know, one person was good at graphic design, another person helped out with promotions. So we were trying to distribute the work a little bit to be able to pull it off, you know, independently.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point of just the scrappiness of being a Wyoming artist. I feel like we really wear all the hats when it comes to getting a job done. So building upon that, what recommendations do you have for artists looking to expand their networks? I mean, you talked a lot about those local partnerships that you had made, or relying on people that you knew within your communities. Are there recommendations for how to approach someone with a partnership, or any other ideas of how people can work to expand their networks?
Well, I think it really depends on what the goal is for an artist. A lot of artists don't want to tour or get out there on the road. You know, I'm working with an artist right now in the studio that has no desire to perform on stage or tour. They want to put up their singer-songwriter and they want a full band sound to be able to make this music come to life. And so it's kind of tough to answer because these days being an artist can mean so many different things. So for instance, if it's sync licensing, you know, you're going to try to develop a really specific kind of niche. For me personally, you know, there was earlier in my career, there was a goal to build a following and to be on the road as much as possible and you know, try to reach the next level and next level. And so, and that's changed over the years. And I think now what I realize is like, and I think a lot of people in the music business measure, you know, allow the industry to measure their success. But I think for a lot of us, you know, on this panel, it's making a living in the music industry. You know, there's a humble existence. There's kind of sort of this recurring mythology about musicians being a starving artist or a star, but there's a huge space in between that's that you can make a living by really diversifying. And so I think that in terms of building networks, it's being realistic and really kind of grinding it out and working with the contacts you have. And I can't stress enough the idea of collaboration. Over the years, I think some of my best opportunities have just come from collaborating with other people and being open to maybe some things that you're not as comfortable doing, and trying to live outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And then can you give some examples from your personal experience? You've talked a lot about what has worked. Are there things that have not worked for you and that you would recommend artists maybe do a different approach?
Yeah, so many things have not worked. And I think that, you know, you tend to grow a thick skin because you hear no a lot in the music business. And I think that I mentioned this before, but and I've always created this sort of mentality in the bands and projects I've been in. is to just find people that are dependable and easy to work with, because that goes far beyond talent sometimes. And I think that if you have like-minded people that have an energy for a project, your network's going to expand through that, I believe, you know. And yeah, that's about what I can, you know, in terms of networking, it's such a hard thing these days. You know, some people dive completely into social media and build a lot of content, and that's a whole different side of being an artist. And other people more like to create outside of social media, and these days that's, I think, a really big divide with artists is the DIY self promotion and how to manage creative time that's not devoted to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Aaron.
You're
I'm gonna
welcome.
go ahead and switch over to Mandy. Mandy, I know you've worked a ton with bands and booking. So given the regional difficulties that many of our artists face in Wyoming, what tips do you have for those looking to break into the festival scene?
Yeah, kind of like I said at the beginning, I've played a role and filled a lot of the different spots, kind of whether it's somebody standing at the front gate scanning QR codes to get thousands of people into a show, you know, an hour before the headliner gets on, to I'm a big festival attendee, but I go and I work them. I've been all over the country attending events, working festivals, that sort of thing. So I'm kind of leading with that caveat. And again, having a roster of artists that I was booking. So that's kind of the perspective I'm going to share with you, and my kind of 2 cents and what's worked for me and not worked for me. As far as tips for breaking into the festival scene, a lot of it kind of leans back to what Aaron and Will were saying. It comes back early on, early stages, small festivals, in networking. It's making the right connections. That's how you're going to get on those smaller stages. That's how you're going to you're going to make those connections. People that attend festivals a lot of times are also the buyers for another festival down the road. That happens at a lot of the songwriter festivals that happen here in the state and in the region. That the connections that I've met and the people I know, they kind of, you know, flip-flop, whether it's the owners and the producers here are going to other shows and festivals in the country, and they're trading information, they're trading contacts. They are going to see who else is out there, they might be big on social media, they might not have a social media following at all. Is it a songwriter? Is it young, very green artists just getting their first chance on a stage in front of a big audience? You know, there's a whole gamut to kind of lean into, but I would say a big part of it is your networking, your connections, and then really just identifying what and where you want to play. Who's a good fit for you? Does your music fit in to that scene, that festival, geographically? Those are all going to be little things that lead into whether you're a good fit. Like I say, geographically, can you afford to travel in? A lot of times, if you're kind of a smaller name, you're an earlier afternoon set, you're probably not making that much money. Then you have to decide, are you a full band and that's who they booked? Can you afford to travel the full band hours away? That's something that you need to think about. Or are you a solo artist that it's a lot easier to just up and move? So being able to make sure, like, logistically you can handle it. Does it fit into your routing? It doesn't really make sense to be applying for festivals on the other side of the country if you don't have any other reason to be there, unless they're reaching out to you and they're offering you a whole lot of money. So those would be a couple tips I'd probably start off with
Yeah, that's
from
great
the
advice.
beginning. And yeah, and I would say the other thing is you're stepping into the festival scene, trying to break in, is make sure you have all your other ducks in a row. Make sure you're somebody that has played in front of an audience. You've plugged your guitar into an amp before. You've sung into a microphone. I touched on being able to afford the travel, and a lot of festivals, good, bad, and different, however you feel about it, will also be looking at your professional level of promotion, as well as what are your social media numbers. Like it or not, it's something they're looking at, even as kind of emerging artists.
Yeah, that's great advice, Mandy. And taking into consideration reaching out and booking and planning one's tour, are there best practices for how to go about finding festivals, ways you recommend reaching out, things within that realm of the logistics of planning?
Yeah, from my experience, again, it's been research, networking, connecting, and showing up. Like from a booking agent role and or an artist role. Show up to those places. You want to play a festival? Show up there. Meet the people. Volunteer to work it a year or two, especially if it's one that's hard to get into. Show up, do the hard work, let them see you, introduce yourself. Those are great ways, especially like in Wyoming, in our region, is to get out there, be present, be seen. But also understand that when you're doing that, just remember in the back of your mind, people are seeing you. So kind of like make sure you're kind of behaving in the way you want to, and that you would be representing that festival. You represent your band, you represent yourself. Make sure that you are putting yourself out there in a great light. So, and it's a trickle effect. Again, you don't know who else is there. You don't know who else you're meeting and what their connections are or their background and how they can help you get to that next step. Some other things I've done, I do a lot of research. The amount of times, like, my algorithms now just tell me of really great festivals or when submission deadlines are, and they feed into a lot of that. But I keep a Google sheet of festivals, the towns, the cities, the time of year, and also when typically is their submission deadline windows, so that you can be applying. You figure out, is it somebody local doing the booking and buying, or are they working with, the bigger booking agencies that will do that sort of thing, whether it's WME, CAA, having those connections. But again, showing up a lot of times, if it's a bigger festival or if it's one of their bigger artists or an emerging artist, you might have the opportunity to meet that booking agent that is working for a national agency that is your connection in. So, and the other fun thing I've done is I've actually reached out. Like if there's festivals that I've identified that like I want my artist in, would be a great fit. I think they're missing the boat, but because they're not on a national agency's roster, I had an artist tell me years ago that basically CDs at this point are a business card. People don't really have CD players anymore. It's still kind of a fun thing to have, but a lot of artists, that's kind of what they're handing out. It might get listened to, it might not. But a couple of summers ago, specifically knowing that I wanted to get my artist on the following year's lineup, because also that's the other caveat. Your big festivals are booked 9 to 12 months in advance. So keep that in mind. If you're thinking you want to play something in July, you need to have been having those conversations back in October. They're probably already booked and they're looking already at 2026 at this point. But I actually went and ordered from Amazon, the big cardboard vinyl boxes. I took EPKs, made one sheets, and actually figured out who the person was doing the buying, and I mailed them vinyl records. If you're an artist, you know, they're not cheap. But when you receive that as a booking agent or a festival talent buyer, you're like, wow, this person took the time. Not only it's not an email, they sent me a physical item. It's something that they had to put some investment into, and they took the time. They want to be here. So that's worked for me before.
That's great advice, Mandy. And kind of building upon that, what are some things to consider when booking a festival? Like, so for instance, like, how do you know you're ready? What type of recommendations would you give with like local artists looking to expand into like that wider festival scene? Kind of what are those bigger pictures? Like, when is a band ready to expand into the festival scene?
I would say kind of like from what I said a few minutes ago, of just making sure you're ready, like not only on a professional level, musically, are you ready? Are you ready, again, if you're touring with a band, to logistically get there? Can you pay them? Can you house them? Like, can you afford the hotel? All of those sort of things are all going to be questions you need to ask yourself. Are you in a place where your branding, your socials, your website, all of those things are kind of in a good place to represent yourself? Get kind of your foundation and your fundamentals down, and then, you know, you've played some different venues, you've played probably, you know, your local parks, you've done those sort of shows. That's when you can start making those steps, I feel, into the other festivals. And again, it's probably the one that's an hour down the road. You probably know them. You've worked with whoever the sponsors are, or the audio engineers, or who's putting on the stage, or you know the owners of the festival or the venue. Like, that's probably where you're going to start. But then once you get a couple of those under your belt, that's when you can also start using those in your marketing. You know, highlight those shows, those festivals as you know, your social credit. You know, I've played these shows, even if you're the noon slot, like the second you've played them, you can include those. That will help you roll into the next bigger show. That helps you get, you know, a little bit later in the lineup. And as you start making those moves, that's how you're going to grow into the bigger. You're going to start getting in front of those other buyers. You're going to get in front of other fans, and you kind of see that slow roll into a bigger thing. I would caution somebody that you might have some viral like TikToks and that sort of thing. You know, you see it on a national level right now. There's some people that suddenly got signed to a label deal that they don't know how to perform. They don't know how to carry a conversation. They don't know how it is the hard role to be that noon or 2 or 3 in the afternoon show. And everybody is like hanging back. You have kids playing in front of you. You need to have put in enough time to understand, how do you keep a conversation going? What jokes might land? How do you get a chuckle out of somebody? Like, those are things that, like, it's gonna take time, but if you were to instantly jump from in front of your camera onto a stage, it's gonna be really, really hard.
Yeah, and I know, Mandy, we've talked about this too, just that practice makes perfect. And a lot of times when artists are transitioning into the festival scene, like, one thing they're not considering is how quick can you set up and take down your stage, because you're only allotted a 10-minute window before you hit you got to start performing. So there's a lot of things too that are a benefit of starting small before aiming big. Like know the practice that you need to make your set flow and work well. So I think all of that is really great advice for artists. And we did have, Mandy, a chat question. Is it important to play a ticketed show prior to attempting to play festivals? How important are ticketed shows to the progress of a band?
In my opinion, I don't think playing a ticketed show necessarily would deter you from being able to play a festival. Depending on the level, a lot of times when you do get picked up on a festival bill, it's with the assumption of either you did know somebody, they're helping you grow your scene, your audience, but a lot of times they do want to know. It's like when you get an opening support slot, can you bring fans? If you've had a ticketed show, you have proof people are willing to pay to come see you. I truly believe that, and it's kind of a culture that needs to change a little bit. A lot of, bars and venues more so, but bars, they don't want to hear that you think they should charge a cover. I think a bar should charge a cover for live music. I think it doesn't have to be much. I think it's, $5 or $10. But in saying that, I believe that because as soon as somebody walks in, they've paid, again, $5, they've actually invested in hearing you, and they become a better listener and a better attendee because they've invested and they're just this much. They are going to be they're not going to be that person probably standing up front talking the whole time. That will still happen. But I think if you can show that you've had ticketed shows, you can sell tickets, it will help a buyer put your placement. I think some newer artists might still get those festival sets. But I do believe that once you get to that point, you've played all the local venues, you've played the bar scene, like I said, you've played the parks, you've played Christmas parties, you've done that sort of thing. I do think the next step is stepping into ticketed shows. And don't step into a venue that you have to sell, I would say even 250. Step into a venue that if you can sell 40 tickets, that's your super fan. If you can't find 40 people that will buy a ticket to your show, you're probably not ready to be at that stage yet. Might be a hot take, but that would be my 2 cents. If you can't sell 40 tickets.
And just kind of wrapping that up too, Mandy, is there an example of something that you've seen that has worked really well?
I'm looking back at our notes when we talked. I think a lot of those things. Again, it all goes back to kind of the community, the networking, representing yourself well. Remember that people are watching you. Those are all the things that are going to roll into being successful, whether it is getting on that festival stage, getting into a local venue to play. A lot of people right now, they want to play listening rooms. If you're a singer-songwriter, you're writing music because you want people to hear what you have to say. Those are few and far between. Those are very coveted spots. But really being persistent, but not in an annoying way, keep trying, understand that a no or a no response isn't the end of the line. Like, be respectful, put space there, but understand and be able to have a hard conversation. Like if one of those rooms isn't booking you, ask them why, and take that feedback and grow from it. See what you can do. Sometimes you might just not be the fit, but other times it might be like, well, we're not willing to take a risk that this is the first time you've ever had a ticketed show. So you say, okay, let me go down the road and find somewhere else that will let me do a $5 cover. So.
Yeah, thanks, Mandy. Again, feel free to use the chat if you guys have any other questions. I'm going to open this next question up to the panel. What is another aspect of the music industry that hasn't been mentioned, but you feel is important for artists to take into consideration when developing their recording or booking strategies?
I'd like to add on to what Mandy was just saying, and this is kind of a way to consider when you're trying to get your foot in the door somewhere. When I started, there's a songwriter series here in Jackson Hole I started called Songwriters Alley, and it was born out of a open mic, and it gradually became focused on original material. And then I basically converted it to a ticketed concert series, and it didn't really fit in any of the local bars, so I started looking at non-traditional venues. So I started hosting in art galleries and coffee shops, and just talking to the owners and see if they would be willing to do something that's different than their normal business day, and have an evening concert with 40 seats, for instance, which is great for a songwriter show. And that started in 2007, and it's still going. Less shows than it used to be. You do about 2 a year now, and it's ticketed in local theaters that are about 250 people. But a good way to start is just kind of look at in terms of venues, because sometimes it can be hard to find a venue that fits your genre. Like around here, it's really focused on Americana and country rock. So or indie, roots country. So if you're a punk band, it's hard to find a gig here. And sometimes you might need to go knock doors at places that are cool spaces that maybe don't have music that you could bring in production and create your own show. Because it doesn't mean there's not people that won't come see it. It's just there's maybe not a traditional stage for you. And I've had a lot of success doing that around the state, where I've noticed that maybe this show wouldn't fit in a tiny little bar, but maybe there's a bigger space and there's an audio engineer locally that we could hire to do production and then bring these 3 bands in. So I would just, throw it out there to sort of look around your community and see what spaces are around and who would be willing to collaborate on shows.
Yeah, that's great, Aaron. Yeah, and if any of the other panelists do, if you have any advice for artists just in general, yeah, feel free to share. We got a couple more minutes, and then I'll open it up to the chat.
I was curious, Mandy, how much does footage of live performance play into getting booked?
Say that again. I missed the first part.
How much does footage of your live performance play into getting booked?
Oh,
Do you need to have that?
yes.
Okay.
Yep. Again, these are all my opinions and in my experience, but yeah, when I am booking, when I'm reaching out, especially cold calling to somebody that's never heard of my artist, that having something recorded, that's one of the cool things that a lot of festivals are doing for an artist when the artists show up. So this is a cool thing. Once you start really getting into those higher tier festivals, they will bring in a video crew. They will film you performing at the festival, and not even necessarily on stage, but a lot of times it's kind of like a green room setup that they will do that. So you get kind of a live recording, but it's professional production. But I do believe that also having even just a highlight reel to show what you look like on stage, how you engage with your audience, even just kind of your stage plot. Sometimes if somebody needs to see if you have 12 members in your band, you're not going to fit on our stage. But also I think it's an energy thing, that when you're trying to align and, a buyer's looking, are you a good fit because you're going to be wild and crazy and you bring that energy, or are you somebody that kind of just, you sit back and you're reserved? Because both those have their places, and kind of like Aaron was saying, getting creative about what a venue is and what that looks like, you know, and from a festival production end, like right now, currently the trends are like a lot of huge festivals are closing their doors. They're saying a lot of them took last year off. Some of them are taking this year off, like, because the expectation has just become that it's all about an experience. As a fan, I travel across the country. I just went to South by Southwest last weekend. Like when you walk in, part of it is like, are you immersed in the energy? You know, that's when they're having vendors, that's when they're having sponsors. If it's a ticketed deal, what is included in your different ticketing levels that not only is feasible as the festival putting it on, but also like is valuable to somebody showing up. Like what's kind of that return on investment on both ends, but really creating that full experience. And to come back to your question, like I think having live video, recorded video, all of those things are going to show, because also live recorded video shows that you know how to act on the fly too. Like sometimes things go wrong. How do you react to that?
Yeah, if any of our participants want to use the chat, I actually had a follow-up question for Louisa, because you were talking about like for when people are reaching out and trying to connect with sync agents, is there like what's the most appropriate way to go about that? Like, is an email okay? Is it best to like wait until after you've gone to a networking event and have met with someone in person? Like what's kind of like the best practices for that initial outreach, and is like cold calling okay?
It is okay. There's just so much of it. So if you want to stand out, I think the easiest way will be to go to a sync conference and connect with somebody and say, hey, we talked for a little bit here, or you gave feedback on this song and I really liked that, or some way to kind of stand out and connect with them more warmly and familiar. And then when you follow up with them later, just say, hey, we talked for a little bit at this conference. You mentioned that you're looking for these kind of tracks. I have these kind of tracks. Or, but you can reach out cold, and it just happens all the time. So it'll be better to stand out if you can go to a sync conference and connect there first.
Cool, thank you. And it doesn't look like we've had any other questions pop into the chat at the moment. So is there any final advice or anything that you guys recommend for artists?
I wanted to mention this because I noticed that my comments weren't going to attendees. So there's a couple places you can go to connect with sync agents or music supervisors. There's a place called NARIP, which is National Association of Recording Industry Professionals, NARIP. They offer memberships, but part of that membership is you can get, it's not exactly one-on-one time, but there's like 10 or so people that will join the call. But what they'll do is the night before the call, they'll send you out a music brief so you can prepare a couple tracks, and then you'll get 10 or 15 minutes to submit a couple tracks to that music supervisor, sync agent, or publisher. So that's one way to connect and get an opportunity to pitch. And then there's also What Up Pitches will offer pitch sessions to sync agency. And then there are lots of sync conferences all over. I think the one in Denver is a good one because people fly in from all over to make it to that one. And that one you get 3 different rooms where you can meet with 3 different music agents, publishers, or supervisors, and you get 3 per each room. So it's also another opportunity to pitch.
Yeah, that's great. And then no more questions, just a thank you. This was fantastic. No questions. Thank you for hosting panelists and sharing their experiences. So thanks, Jason. Back to you as well for participating. And with that, it doesn't look like we've had any other questions, so I'll just kind of wrap us up. But in conclusion, as a note to our artists listening, the Wyoming Arts Council currently has open call for the 2025 Wyoming Road Trip playlist. This will close April 30th. And additionally, our Performing Arts Fellowship in Music will open April 10th. Those are both opportunities hosted by the Wyoming Arts Council. And both of these can be found online via Submittable. As I said, I don't know quite if you guys can see our chats from this end. So I'll send up a follow-up email, both with the information Louisa said she would provide and some of those links to our open calls as well. And then lastly, just to note, our professional development grant will be opening tentatively mid-April, but we may be bumping that into May as we kind of figure out what that's going to look like for this next year. But this is a great grant for musicians. Individuals can apply. You do not need to be a nonprofit or associated with an arts organization. You can be an individual and you can get funds for up to $1,000 that can go towards anything that can help you professionally. So attending a festival, attending a conference, like a sync conference, networking opportunities, equipment, if you need like a new guitar or some recording equipment. This is an awesome grant that can go towards basically anything that will help you grow as a musician. And I oversee this grant, so I'm more than happy to meet with you individually, either over the phone or in person if you're near Laramie, which is my home base, and go through that grant process with you. It's really curtailed towards this being people's first introduction to grant writing. So if you don't have an experience with that, that is not a hindrance to this application. And I am more than happy to work one-on-one with you to apply for that grant. Additionally, this webinar is being recorded, so this will be housed on our website. And additionally, you all will get a link to it after the fact, I believe. And as again, all our panelists are awesome. I'm sure that if you wanted any of their contact information, I'd be more than happy to share that as well. So to wrap up our discussion, I just want to say thank you again to our panelists. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. Thank you again to the Wyoming Arts Alliance. And thank you all for participating in our webinar. We really appreciate it. And hopefully this gave you some good information and a little bit of excitement for what the work that you're doing as an artist in our state. And we're all just here to really support you all and hopefully get you paid money. So
Thanks, y'all.
thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.